Okay, guys, so I was driving along and I saw this thing in the road. I thought it was like a boulder at first. And as I drove up, I realized it was actually kind of furry. And I pulled up and stopped, and it started moving. And I noticed that the top of it, a head was coming around with huge ears, and it stood up, and it had to be about 9 feet tall. And its mouth opened, revealing just the biggest fangs I've ever seen. Mm. And it said to me, "Welcome to Strikes Our Fancy, the show where we talk about just that, whatever strikes our fancy." This week, we are doing a little cryptozoology. I'm Rob, and with me I have...
Dr. Caleb, ready to talk everything cryptozoology. I got my master's in cryptozoology.
And neophyte Craig. I did not know a lot about cryptids before we started diving into this week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, I don't know. They've never been a huge area of interest for me, personally. So I thought it was fun to dig into it this week.
Yeah.
See, but I mean, like you'd heard of.
Oh, yeah. Them, right? No, I know of cryptids.
Yeah.
But I like stuff with a lot of story behind it. And I don't know, I just feel like all cryptids are things out in the wild. Mm-hmm. Like they're just critters that we don't know about. So I'm very interested to hear about your guys' to just know more, because I hope there's a little more depth.
Critters. Sure. When you were telling that, doing the intro there for a moment, I thought, is he talking about a giant tribble?
I was waiting for it to be the Loch Ness Monster and for it to ask for tree fitting.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
That's from South Park, right?
Yes.
It baffles me that that's caught on so much in popular culture.
Pervasive.
Like, that it's stuck around.
Yeah. People, I still hear that today. I'm like, that is an old reference. Mm-hmm. So we're talking cryptozoology. I believe we all brought our own critters to the table. I like that you referred to them as a critter. Like they're something that we can just keep.
Yeah. I object to that term.
Critter?
Yeah. Because some of them have a level of intelligence. And I feel like critter, that's more of a mindless animal.
Well, okay, so before we dive in, maybe we need to define what is a cryptid, because I have a mental image.
Webster's Diction.
Well, so a cryptid is obviously some type of creature that is unknown to mainstream science. It's not proven. It's not disproven. You know, you've got your Sasquatches, your Loch Ness Monsters, Chupacabras, and some of these are just critters, like you said, but not all of them. Some people believe that Sasquatch is smart. There are also a variety of devilmen and other man-like creatures.
And to me, yeah, like as soon as you approach sentience, it's not necessarily a cryptid anymore. We escape the cryptozoology element. To me, it's not animal anymore. So I don't know. To me, there's two different classifications to be made here.
Can we just call them monsters? They're just monsters.
They're monsters, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's appropriate.
And actually, while I was saying that, something occurred to me that had not before we started recording this.
What's that?
I have never heard of a female cryptid.
Like
Mothman?
Yeah.
I guess I didn't know that any of them... Nessie is usually referred to as
that's
female.
True, yeah.
But that's mostly just because of the name it's given.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I don't know if gender is a huge part of any cryptid story.
Well, right, but like Caleb said, you get Mothman. Bigfoot is usually depicted as male.
Jersey Devil.
Yeah. Just name calling everyone that we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
But on that note, since we are discussing kind of the path between animal and not so animal, maybe we should have Caleb tell us a little bit about the skunk ape.
The skunk ape. That's I never. Is that like an actual term for Bigfoot, Sasquatch?
It's more of a Sasquatch in the South.
Okay. Oh yeah, you are from Florida.
Yep.
That is so weird. I've never heard of that one. Yeah, my own cryptocurrency is Bigfoot, the old Sasquatch, Harry Jack. I just made that up. I don't know if anybody calls it that.
I would be surprised if no one. It sounds perfectly normal.
Basically, there is lore going all the way back to Native American tribes in reference to a big hairy monster thing that will just come out of the darkness. There's references to it not only in like pictographs, but also oral stories. As you white people came over, things were starting to written down as well. Not only here in America, but you got the Yeti over in the, God, what is it? The high snowy places. The Alps.
Mountains?
Alps around that area, yeah. Which is basically snowy Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
So like part of me is like, kind of similar to dragons, how there's like a lore for dragons kind of similarly all kind of throughout different cultures all over the world. There has to be something to this. A little bit. There's something for big feet. Is that the pluralization? Bigfoots? Yetis?
I don't know.
I think there's something to this. There has to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's mentions of big, tall, hairy creatures all over the world.
Do you think it might be some kind of a cultural memory of other early hominids?
Possibly. I mean, it goes back that far.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the memories of all these people.
Oh, here's a question. Do Aboriginal Australians have a Sasquatch of their own?
Not that I could find.
When I was looking at cryptids that I might want to talk about, I did find an Aboriginal cryptid, but it wasn't a squatch. It was an unholy amalgamation of a bunch of different animals that supposedly slurps out of the water and eats people and then goes back.
It wasn't the drop bear?
No. Oh, but now that you mention that, no, there is an Australian version. Oh, they call it like a uni. Shoot, I'm gonna have to look that up again. But yes, they do have a version in Australia. I don't know if it's Aboriginal,
Sure.
or if it's been more of an urban legend, but they have their own spin on it.
So, like, I think there's a kind of thought towards these things, these Sasquatches, these Bigfoot, and there's tons of names for them all throughout, like different tribes. I can't pronounce them, so I'm not going to try. So, for the simplicity of it, these big feet.
Mm-hmm. I think it's actually Bigsfoot.
Bigsfoot. for these Bigsfoots. There's a lot of thought towards them being physical creatures. And I think that's the general consensus whenever you think of them. But I remember hearing a story from a friend of mine when I used to work at the tribal jail. And he was talking about, my, whatever it was, cousin, whatever.
It's always somebody's cousin.
It's always somebody's cousin. Was talking about a Bigfoot sighting near his house. He lives deep in the woods. And he's like, yeah, he could smell like this really bad, like rotting smell, and he could hear things like moving about in the woods. I'm like, yeah, but that's just the woods. And I was like, there's nothing like physically there that I don't think would that harbingers a Bigfoot. And he's like, well, yeah, there is. And I was like, well, did you see any like physical footprints, big footprints around the area when they looked? And they're like, they're not like physical, right? And I was like, what do you mean?
What?
And he says, these are spirits. This Bigfoot is a spirit. It's not an actual physical being.
Huh.
That's something I've never heard before.
And that's what he was telling me. Like, for his own, like, knowledge about it. It wasn't... That's why there's no evidence for these. There's no dead bodies of big feet found, because it's not an actual physical monster. It is a spirit of nature. And I thought that was an interesting take on it. A very... specific cultural take on it.
Yeah.
A spirit of nature. So not like an embodiment or like a ghost of some ancestor or a person who died in the past.
I think spirit in general, whenever we talk about spirits today, it is it's a ghost.
Yeah. Which I think it can be more than that.
When talking tribally, when talking like in our sort of lore, my own sort of lore, like my own cultural lore, I think it's not just like a spiritual representation of somebody who has passed or anything. It is kind of in general an ethereal entity as opposed to just the spirit of somebody who has died. So spirit doesn't just accompany, I don't think, just a dead body. It is just an embodiment of something.
Right, kind of like in the European style of ghosts, but also angels, demons, and
Yeah. It's a catch-all.
other non-corporeal beings.
Yeah.
In that lore of spirits, so he's saying they're not physical, but yeah, can they physically interact with our world? Like,
I think you're still thinking closed-minded about it. Like
Yeah, of course, yeah.
your own, like, again, think like me. I think whenever you do think spirit, you do think this is something that was dead and now it's alive.
Well, no,
or undead, I guess.
I guess that's not what I'm stuck on. I'm saying, like, even if does it have any physical attributes? Is what I'm getting at. Like, can it?
I think a lot of it is able to interact with the physical world.
Okay.
Because this isn't a spirit in the sense of a dead being.
Right.
This is just a spirit in the sense of an unknown entity.
Okay.
So I don't think it is very ephemeral. I think that's the good term for it.
Okay.
If it is a spirit, that kind of explains why it's always out of focus.
That is, and you know, on that certain point, you know, most of those photos and most of the so-called evidence, such as the casted big feet found, are fake.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like, it's not real things. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You look pained.
I've never heard this theory before, so I'm just processing.
Oh, yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
like, I've never thought. I always thought of land apes, that there's some lost mammal that just is very in low population, and so they're very rarely seen. So you've shifted my worldview, Caleb. Give me a minute, jeez. I will admit, I'm still a little hung up. I'm not necessarily saying a spirit has to have motivation. Like, it can be intangible and have no motivation. But my main question is, what's it doing then?
Man, what's anything doing? It's just hanging out.
Yeah, it's just hanging. Just having a good old time.
Okay. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
What's the moon doing, Craig?
That's inanimate.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the spirit is just doing what it does.
Okay, but what is that? What is the thing that it's doesn't?
what are you doing, Craig?
It just walks around. It just walks around and smells bad.
Exactly.
Okay.
Same thing I do.
I mean, Rob is Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. It's such an alien, foreign concept. At my base level, I am motivated to survive. That, if I had nothing else to do, that is my modus operandi. So what is its?
I mean, you could ask that of any sort of cryptid.
Right.
I mean, I have no clue. I can't.
Just because it's a spirit doesn't mean it doesn't have to eat.
Okay.
Yeah, Rob is absolutely correct.
So what do you think it eats?
Other spirits? I have no idea.
Yeah,
I mean,
other spirits.
it's like Pac-Man. Wonka.
As long as you're thinking about it, you're feeding it. So it needs to come around a little bit, but not too much that you would know what it is and not wonder.
Shit. A year later, are we drawing more paranormal entities to my home?
Yes.
Fuck.
I mean, the more you think about something, the more power you give it.
Mhm.
Rob is correct.
Fuck. I don't care anymore.
It's defeated.
You hear me? I don't care.
But what are you guys' own personal opinions about Bigfoot before such a revelation was imposed upon you?
Well, I am pretty skeptical of it. If it was indeed another type of ape, it just seems incredibly unlikely that there can be a species with as low population as it would have to not be discovered in, North America. So I always was of the opinion that it is something else that is known, but is misidentified by hikers or campers or what have you.
It's just a bear on its hinders.
Right, yeah.
Which is a theory that's been proposed. Yeah.
Greg?
I had not given a lot of mental effort to squatches in the past. The evidence that I have seen, there's that, what is that very pervasive, blurry photo.
Mm-hmm.
I have always just assumed it's a dude in a gorilla suit, basically. But yeah, I kind of agree with Rob. This idea that there would be a physical animal or some sort of hominid that has completely gone undiscovered, I find that very far-fetched. But on the flip side, that is where the science comes in. That's where cryptozoology branches from, I think, cryptid lore, is when they do actually find something like, oh, we didn't know this existed before. Like giant squids, krakens.
Yeah.
Those were not known for most of our history, but there was this lore that sailors had, that they had seen some, but now we know they are a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and if you were to tell me that, hey, we think we saw this hominid creature in the Amazon rainforest, that's a little bit more believable, because, I mean, I know there are tribes and things in there, but there isn't a vast network of people moving around and then coming out and telling everybody, hey, I saw this thing in there. So that seems more believable to me. On the same side as the giant squid, there's enough area for this small group to be that we don't really go to. But Pacific Northwest, man, come on. That a Sasquatch would show up in somebody's garbage.
A hipster would have spotted it while getting coffee.
Yeah.
And then turn it into a brand of some sort.
Yeah. So Caleb, you shared this story of a friend's cousin. Is that what you think? Like, have you kind of internalized that and you agree with it, or it's
a
just
little bit? I mean, I agree with. I'm not gonna say I'm more scientifically minded, but like it did cross my mind. There are no dead bodies found of big feet, Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that seems like something you would stumble upon at some point in this long story.
That's because you haven't found the hidden Squatch burial grounds. They obviously care for their dead.
Well, I will give credit on that note. When you go out into the woods, you don't generally just see a ton of bones and skeletons all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, and there are a lot of critters dying in the woods all the time.
That's offensive. Critters? Rob, you just said.
No, I'm Bigfoot is out of this conversation. I'm talking about wolves, coyotes, bears. You know, there are a lot of creatures that will eat the corpse, and then a lot of other creatures that will come and scatter the bones, bury them, eat them, do whatever they do with them.
So there is a plausible sort of reason why nothing's been discovered.
I mean, if you believe that there is a low population of big feet, then it makes sense that you wouldn't necessarily find bodies of them.
Or it could just mix in with, I think it is this, because bones kind of just look the same all around, don't they, for the most part?
That's really bonus of you.
But that's my opinion. And it does answer some of those questions for me, because like, I think the term spirit is a catch-all for things that just aren't understandable, you know? And I think if this thing is a spirit, I don't think we would know a motive. I don't think we would know habits or anything like that. It is just something. It could be an omen. It could be, you know, anything that it appears for a reason. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a living, like, lost link somewhere amongst our own evolutionary chain. So I would much rather believe it's a spirit over a lost sort of human cousin.
All right.
Yeah.
I got no strong feelings.
You still look shattered.
Not shattered. I will admit that's not a satisfying answer. Like, I don't like that.
I don't think we're going to get any satisfying answers.
I know.
If there were satisfying answers, it wouldn't be a cryptid.
Yeah.
I will admit it veers a little too close to it's unknowable. And I hate that. I hate anyone who claims anything is unknowable. I'm like, you're selling something. That's my mindset. I'm just very leery of that. And I know that's obviously not what you're doing, but it rings a little too close.
I think, you know, everything we're going to bring up tonight is inherently unknowable. I don't think we're going to figure these things out
right,
in
so-
our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Confirmed, Caleb is trying to get us in on the Sasquatch pyramid scheme.
I got NFTs of Bigfoot that I'm looking to sell. Go to strikesarfancy.site. That is not the website.
Boy,
that's-
skunk apes.
The skunk ape NFT. I don't even know what that is. That is just as mysterious to me as these cryptids.
And just as real.
No doubt. But that's my story. That's my cryptid. Craig, what did you bring to the table for us tonight?
I want you to imagine you're walking through a sparse cedar forest in the northeast of the U.S., near the coast. You can hear the Atlantic waves beating against the rocky shore as you're walking through the forest. There's a low fog along the ground, and then you start to hear the flap of large wings, unfeathered wings. And you look up, and you see flying across the starlight a creature with the body of a goat, with two goat hind legs and kind of stumpy, lesser forelegs, giant bat wings, and the head of a goat. You have just spotted the Jersey Devil.
I did not know it had a goat head.
Yeah. Well, there's something I'm going to dive into. Is there are many different descriptions and stories about the Jersey Devil.
So is that kind of the commonality of it?
Yeah, there seems to be a root story that has been generally accepted and kind of passed along. But as I was looking into it, there are so many different spottings and renditions and tellings of this story, of this creature.
Mm-hmm.
But they do date back to before the founding of our country. They started in the early 1700s as the settlers were populating the area. That supposedly sightings of this creature in this region in New Jersey take place. There is a weird... There are multiple origin stories, but there's one in particular, again, it's very pervasive, and I thought it was very strange. Supposedly, this woman, only referenced now as Mother Leeds, had 12 children, and she got pregnant with a 13th. And because she was so poverty-ridden and had so many responsibilities, she literally cursed her own child, her 13th child, and bore this creature out of her own womb and cursed it upon the world, and it has been living and roaming the area ever since.
She cursed the world because she...
No, she cursed her own child.
Oh.
She
Why would
didn't
she
want
not-
the child.
Why would she not just drown it?
Oof.
I mean, a curse is a big deal.
Yeah.
Don't mess with curse magic, man.
Yeah. Well, and I did in all the different origin stories, that is the running theme, is that supposedly the Jersey Devil is the result of a curse, be it from a gypsy or from like a town for someone who betrayed the town to the British. Shoot, there was another one. Like, I think like a roving band of like travelers cursed a woman who was pregnant. Like, there was always a curse involved. That was one of the root themes.
Why would random people just be like, that pregnant woman over there? She's going to have a devil baby.
We can dive into those details. That was one offshoot story that I found. But this Mother Leeds one is the kind of core story.
So, stories and myths aside, are there actual verifiable sightings?
No. Throughout the history of this creature, I thought there was something very interesting that stood out. It was told word of mouth originally. You know, this idea of this creature that lives in this forest region in New Jersey. But around 1909, a newspaper prints an article of a sighting of the Jersey Devil, and it's circulated in the area. And within a week, 30 more quote unquote sightings occur. And I just thought that was a prime example of how like stories are just pervasive. You know, people are bored and they have nothing better to do. And so this idea that a story is kind of invades the culture and twists and turns into something bigger than any one person.
Well, so there is that aspect of it, and surely that is absolutely something that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But could it also be that these people were seeing this thing around, and they're like, "What the hell is that?" And it runs away. They don't know what it is, and then the story is printed saying, "Hey, here's the Jersey Devil," and suddenly all these sightings that would have normally just been, "Oh man, I saw something weird in the woods last night," become, "I saw the Jersey Devil."
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Of the 30, one of them, more than one, has got to be a little more true than the others.
And see, I fundamentally disagree. Yeah. I don't feel that because a story is told more times, that doesn't give it any more credence.
Well, when you say more real than the others, do you mean someone actually saw the Jersey Devil?
Someone saw something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to like maybe some who are just like, we're going to send this into the paper.
Yeah.
I think one of those 30 had to have seen something that they're just like, this other story has given me an idea to go off of what I saw.
Right.
So I don't think they know what they're looking at, but they just use this as a jumping off point.
Absolutely. I can agree with that, but I think it's unfortunate that it's human nature to maybe sometimes attribute a story to something you don't understand and make a correlation that maybe doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
It's disingenuous to what's actually happening. You're occluding your own reality based on a story you heard that it could be pure fiction.
I mean, stories by and large are fiction. And I think besides entertainment, stories are also told as cautionary tales. Maybe there's a reason somebody wanted to keep people away from this particular area of the forest.
From Mother Leeds.
Yeah.
Because she cursed her children.
Exactly.
Well, that's, I think, part of I'm going to leap off of that. Part of the reason it got a devil in its name, that it's the Jersey Devil, is during this time, everyone attributed it also to natural phenomenon. Like, almost like a pagan god. Like, oh, the crop stall died this year, must have been the Jersey Devil. Or, oh, all my livestock died, it was the Jersey Devil. Or like even drought and famine in the area as well got all attributed to this creature, even though no one might have even seen it in the area.
Justice for the poor Jersey Devil. Baby Leeds.
Yeah.
Baby Leeds.
Yeah. One of the more notable sightings, which I thought was really interesting, Napoleon's brother was hunting apparently in the area and saw it and apparently did nothing. He was so stunned he didn't shoot at it, even though he had a rifle in his hand. But that was as I was looking into trying to find more reputable sightings, that was the best I could do.
You say that with like disgust in your voice, like you would have shot the Jersey Devil.
Well, it's like there's this menacing creature supposedly flying around you, and you have a gun in your hand, and you're so stunned you don't shoot at it.
Craig, it can cause drought.
Exactly. It could curse his family.
Yeah. If he would have shot at it, then his cattle would have died.
You're not thinking like logically about this, Craig.
No.
Put some logic to this.
No, I'm
There's
sorry.
a reason he didn't shoot it.
So after this kind of explosion of sightings, some communities in the region paid some scientists from local colleges to like try and figure out what the hell's actually going on. And they basically said, we didn't find anything. And based on the descriptions, it's maybe a pterodactyl, a plesiosaur, or maybe a big crane, like a bird. Because supposedly there's a sand crane in the region that can grow like 4 feet tall and has a pretty big wingspan. But the summation of their findings was this description we're being given is so foreign from any known animal. We have no idea what the hell people are seeing.
Why would giant bat not be an option? There are actually like 5 foot tall bats.
Yeah. I don't know, but that was not in the ring for possibilities.
I'm sure there aren't giant bats native to New Jersey, though.
No, but I mean, like those things exist, and I don't know, maybe one got lost and just flew to New Jersey.
Yeah.
That is more believable to me than
A pterodactyl.
a pterodactyl, yeah, or a flying plesiosaur.
But yeah, obviously, the legend persists today because there's a bunch of iconography in New Jersey about the New Jersey Devils. There's an NHL team from Jersey called the Jersey Devils, and it's the mascot.
There's a pretty cool PS1 game called Jersey Devil.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And there's a good horror movie called The Last Broadcast about the Jersey Devil.
Huh.
It was a found footage film a few years before Blair Witch Project got to it. So
It just didn't take off like Blair Witch.
I hear it's really good. I haven't seen it, but I hear it's really, really good.
Okay.
But yeah, it is even in culture, pretty pervasive. Are there any recent sightings?
I really couldn't find much, and I attributed it to, as everyone has a phone on them at all times that has a pretty good camera, suddenly all of the sightings suddenly stop. You know?
Yeah, but you don't shoot the Jersey Devil.
I guess.
It will curse you.
Well, but even that, like, that's, again, I found multitudes of stories about who it is, what its motivations are, and none of them were unified. Like, there's all these different stories. And so, I don't know. To me, it just definitely feels like this local story that just kind of caught fire and never went away.
It is kind of crazy that there are so many origin stories. You don't see that a lot. You see, oh yeah, maybe it's this kind of thing, but yeah, that people are saying, yeah, oh yeah, that's Mother Leeds kid. Yeah.
Or no, that's the gypsy cursed person. Or, oh, it's from, this weird traitorous woman with the British Army. It's so weird. Like, just multiple origin stories, and it doesn't seem to be a root to any of it.
And it always involves a woman of some sort.
Yeah, that's supposedly, this creature was birthed by a human. That I guess is a running theme.
Oh, good.
Oh, well, so the moral of the story for me is I thought it was a very interesting tale of groupthink and embellishments on a story that just grew over time and people morphing it into the story they wanted it to be, far less than anything consistent that's actually being cited. That's what I think is happening.
You know, I do find it interesting that there's not really a movie about Bigfoot, but there is at least one movie about the Jersey Devil. And for Rob's pick tonight, you know. And so
there's no movies about Bigfoot?
I don't think so.
What's the one?
Harry and the Sasquatch?
Yeah, thank you.
Harry and the
Hendersons.
Yeah. I was like,
but it's not scary.
John Lithgow. We don't want you. But yeah, what do you think's going on with the Jersey Devil, Rob?
Kind of like you with the Sasquatch. I never really gave it much thought. It's a thing. That's all I know about it. There's that story that's out there.
Do you even think it's an interesting story?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm a little bit more interested now hearing the curse angle. But, I mean, a curse in New England, come on, guys. Be a little bit more original.
Right? It's all about witches. Why was it all about witches in early America in the Northeast?
Puritanical hysteria.
Yeah.
So how about you, Rob? What amazing mythological or unknown entity are you bringing to the table
Well, this
tonight?
is a guy that I actually did at one point think was the Jersey Devil. Like, it wasn't a theory I had. Like, I didn't know it was a different creature.
Oh, okay.
I thought they were just interchangeable names, like Sasquatch and Yeti. And I don't know when I realized they weren't, but I have that memory of thinking Mothman, Jersey Devil, same guy. And I don't know
you
why.
never see them at the same time.
Right? Yeah. But I mean, they have kind of a similar style. You know, they're seen flying at night. kind of unexplainable, way too big to fly on those skimpy little wings. Kind of grotesque, horrible face. No offense if you're listening.
Jeez. Harsh.
Not my words. That's what everyone says.
Well, I mean, even the Jersey Devil, a face the mother couldn't love.
Yeah.
Well, she never gave it a shot. And I still think she should have cursed her husband, not the baby.
There was no mention of a husband in the story.
Well, where do the other 12 kids come from?
I don't know how babies are made.
Well,
something about birds and bees.
When a woman loves a devil very much.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I did a little bit of a dive on the Mothman. And I actually did not know until we were starting to read about this. I was starting to read about this, that there had been a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of changes my opinion of the whole thing.
Because is it a historical documentary? Like,
well, no. Because
like, oh yeah, there's a lot of weight
I
to
thought
this.
that, like the Jersey Devil or Sasquatch, there is this unbroken line of sightings. Every now and then he shows up. But Mothman kind of disappeared after the 70s. There just really weren't that many sightings. Occasionally you'd hear like one. And then starting in 2002, Mothman prophecies come out, and suddenly, just like the Jersey Devil, there are sighting after sighting after sighting. So, that seems a little bit made up. Yeah. And especially in this case, you don't hear about, before the movie comes out, you don't hear people saying, oh yeah, I saw this thing, I didn't know what it was. Maybe it was Mothman.
What does Mothman purportedly look like?
Well, Mothman is maybe gray or brown, but I wonder how anybody would know because he only comes out at night.
Is that a regional thing? Like based on the foliage?
Yeah, right.
It's a different color to blend in.
He is 4 feet to 8 feet tall.
Whoa.
Depending on who's telling the story. And the only thing that really is consistent in the Mothman story is that he has giant eyes, usually red, sometimes amber. Which, in my opinion, if that were a real creature, I would understand that sometimes they appear more red than yellow, or more yellow than red. I could get beyond that. But the vast differences in height is what really sells me on this whole thing being made up. Well,
and real quick, so Mothman, I feel like there's an implied humanoid appearance.
Yes, yeah. He's bipedal. Actually, I was surprised to find out that most depictions don't have arms.
Okay.
He has wings instead of arms. But sometimes he has arms.
So is he in fact attracted to light?
Yeah.
Well, so the original stories were that he liked to follow cars on the highway.
Oh.
And like he would fly along with them.
Like alongside or like behind?
Depends on who's telling the story.
Okay.
I would assume ahead so the driver can see him. Probably the most likely. Also, an interesting through line, he never flaps his wings.
Just like glides.
Yeah. Even on takeoff, people say he doesn't flap his wings.
Huh. So he doesn't even need them.
Yeah. Yeah, he flies like Superman.
Weird.
Yeah.
So there is like a mystical element. Like this is not a creature that physically makes sense.
Right.
Huh.
And, there are some explanations on what he might be, but none of them are trying to say this is how Mothman came to be. It's more of this is one way that might have created a creature like this. But nobody's trying to say like, I know how Mothman came about. I know what he really is. There's also an interesting link with UFOs. But, the Mothman story really starts in the late 50s, early 60s, kind of as UFO mania was gripping the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So that might have just been a holdover from the era that everybody was thinking about UFOs at the time. So people probably just said, oh, maybe it's a crashed UFO. Maybe it's a spaceman that's just living out in the Carolinas.
So my only knowledge of Mothman comes from the movie, The Mothman Prophecies with Richard Gere.
Richard Gere?
Yeah. It's a good movie. I like it.
So I like that you said that, because I read a review of it that said the most disappointing thing about the movie wasn't that it was bad, just that it was boring.
It's a slow burn.
Yeah.
But the movie, purportedly based on a true story, heavily implies that the Mothman is a harbinger of doom, that it shows up when disaster is about to happen some places. And even after the movie, I've read that it has, again, people look into these things too much, I think, but there are reported sightings of it at the Twin Towers before the 9/11 attacks.
What?
And other things like that.
That was a surprise to me. I had never heard that before. For me, it had always been just this weird guy that's around, and so he's scary. But yeah, in doing this research, that he was flying around the Twin Towers.
Like physically around the Twin Towers? Or he was seen like in the Carolinas roughly before that time?
No. People are saying they were in New York City, they looked up, and they saw Mothman.
So, like, do you think that it is, again, another spirit of some sort that is just a harbinger of doom that shows up when things are about to get bad? Is that something that crossed your mind, or is that?
The harbinger of doom seems to be a late add-on to the story. The initial accounts don't really link it to anything. And I don't know when that became part of the Mothman story. So I would have to say that seems pretty unlikely.
Probably an add-on after the movie.
Right. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe he's a member of Al-Qaeda.
Jeez. When people have seen it, or when it's interacting with cars or lights or whatever, is there any maliciousness to these stories? Like, does it attack? Does it mess with them? Like any animal behaviors, or it's just kind of around and then it leaves?
Yeah, it's mostly just around and it leaves. The few accounts of people coming up to it, like outside of a car, when they see it head on, they are filled with complete terror at seeing it, which I can understand. That if it really does have the face of a moth, but is the size of a man, that is horrifying.
Yeah, it would be terrifying.
And they always say, like, they feel almost like it's injecting fear into them or projecting fear out of its body at them. I don't know. Maybe they're just afraid of it. But if there are stories of the Mothman hurting anybody, they're incredibly rare. I didn't find any.
Okay.
So, like, I hear that, and I'm just like, if I saw a bear in the woods, I'm not going to claim it's injecting fear into me. I'm just going to be terrified.
Right.
No. You're a brave person, Caleb. It's external. You can't. That's not your fault. You're feeling those feelings.
Oh yeah, it's the bear's fault.
Yeah.
Right. But a bear is not a cryptid. A bear is just a regular animal. Mothman might have psionic powers.
Absolutely, but if we're going about these things logically.
No, wait. When did we start doing that?
What's the motive? So I'm just saying. I think if I saw it, I don't know if I would like. I am curious to what the injection of fear feels like on their end. Like, is it just fear, or do they?
I wonder. I do wonder, how is that different than being afraid of it?
Yeah,
but there were a couple of accounts that they said that, like, while it was scary, they felt like it was doing something to make them afraid.
Okay. It's just an intangible.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have no idea what that means.
So what do you think of the story? Do you think these are real?
No. Not at all.
Absolute answer.
No. I love Mothman, but I think he's just a silly story. There is, however, a real Mothman statue that exists in Virginia. And I apologize, dear listener. I left my notes at home because I'm a plebe that takes physical notes. But yeah, there is a real there's a statue of Mothman that in I think it was about 2006. Somebody just decided we should have a statue of Mothman.
Does its eyes glow?
No,
no.
It
feels like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, but it did apparently get included in Fallout 76, and the Mothman statue is in that game.
So, like, I do know that the statue itself is in Point Pleasant, Virginia, West Virginia, around that area.
I think it's Virginia.
Because, again, the movie claims all these things were real.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bridge collapse in Point Pleasant back in the 60s. And again, that's where a lot of these Mothman stories come from, I think. Because they claim they saw it days before it happened. The movie itself kind of updates the time frame to the 90s when it was released, or early 2000s or whatever. But the story itself is that it happened in Point Pleasant. There was lots of Mothman sightings. So that's why this random location in Virginia has a Mothman statue, because they claim that it was bringing about maybe if not the doom of the bridge, but like it was foreboding for the bridge.
Sure.
Collapse.
It's prophesizing.
It was prophesizing. There it is. Craig looks baffled.
I'm just wondering, is it sensing the doom and it wants to be around that, or is its presence causing the problems?
Oh, it's trying to warn people, stay off the damn bridge.
Yeah, it could be.
Get out of the towers.
Yeah, injecting you with fear to leave.
To stay away.
Right.
Exactly.
Huh.
He's a really nice guy.
That's what people say.
Yeah, because I don't know. While a giant moth would be terrifying to see, you also think of the abilities of a moth, and I don't really know that there's a whole lot to be afraid of.
As opposed to sensing and being attracted to light, it's attracted to danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Just snap its little fragile antenna.
Does it have antenna? Is that
most of the drawings don't depict
what?
them? Yeah.
That's like the whole thing of a moth.
Right. No, but it's more it's like the Pokemon Venomoth on like a person's body. So just like fuzzy with two big eyes.
That's adorable.
A lot of people feel that way. But apparently he injects you with terror. So Caleb, what do you think Mothman is?
If I had to pin it down, again, I guess I am the more...
You'd pin Mothman?
I would pin Mothman down. Oh, because that fucking is. It took me a moment. Again, I think all of these things could be lumped under, again, with my own, not experience, but my own, like, what people have told me, as a spirit of some sort. You know, these things don't show up on best days. I don't think. I wouldn't think. Like, I think they're harbingers of some sort, whether it's, you know, a death in the family or anything like that. I think that's, maybe they're here to warn us as opposed to inject fear in us.
Do you think there's some sense of it's an altered memory where something terrible happened and then, oh yeah, I saw Mothman before that, but they didn't really see anything. They're looking for an explanation, and they put Mothman days before this thing happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid... I think they hear the legend of it, and they're just like, oh man, I think I saw shit a day before. I think that's a valid way to look at it, too. I mean, our minds fuck with us all the time.
Yeah, that's true. Craig?
I think it's just another urban legend that just kind of ebbs and flows and finds its way into pop culture and the zeitgeist sometimes and falls out again.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't. While I would probably be filled with terror if I ever saw it, I don't think that possibility exists.
So before we do wrap it up, I am just curious: is there any cryptid that exists that you've looked at that you're just like, there's a good possibility, or there's a decent possibility that this thing exists in a physical manifestation as like an actual thing?
Huh.
Nothing comes to mind, but to Craig's point about the Kraken, if you were to tell me about some deep sea creature, I'm just going to believe that it exists because, there was, the giant squids, coelacanth. What else? There's another species that was thought to be extinct for like 100 years that showed up in waters again. So, if you tell me anything's in the ocean, I'll just believe that because who knows what the hell's down there.
So if I was just like, hey, there's a fish with like bird wings.
If you told me there was a fish with a human face on it that could grant wishes, I'd believe you.
As I was digging through this, a great example someone pulled up, like, say electric eels died out like 100 years ago, but you were told about one? Oh yeah, there's this long snake that lives in the water and it can generate electricity with its body. Like, that sounds like a cryptid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point, Rob. Like, if cryptid exists, they're in the fucking water.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go in the water.
Yeah.
Or even platypuses.
Yeah.
Considered like, this is just a jumbled mess of a creature.
Right. Yeah, I would not believe that.
My own personal opinion, chupacabras are an actual creature.
Oh yeah,
that exists. I mean, there's been actual videos of this thing. Like, it looks like it could just be like, I don't think it's like a devil or anything, but I think it is actually something that sucks the blood of animals. It's just an animal.
I think they're just like sick coyotes.
That's a good possibility too.
Yeah, that was when I was looking around. That's the popular realist theory. It's a coyote with mange.
Yeah.
It's like all of its fur is gone. I don't know. I am very much an evidence-based person. Like, if something is measurable, then I'll believe in it. If it's not, I really struggle.
There's no magic in your guys' lives at all.
I'm willing to believe. Mothman may not be real, but he lives in my heart.
So we've all told our wonderful tales for our spooky season.
If you've cited any of these creatures and have proof of them, I would tell you to send them to strikesourfancy@gmail.com, but sources claim that this podcast doesn't exist. Well, whether we're here or not, I've been Rob.
I am the enigma that is Caleb.
Perpetual skeptic Craig.
And this has been potentially Strikes Our Fancy.